Boy, thanks for coming, especially my students, who I know that it's kind of a little bit hard for them to find the time to come to these talks, so I really appreciate that. And I have to point out, I don't know where she wound up sitting, but Sam Cox, right in the back, okay, very instrumental person in this project. I wish she was up here doing the talk, actually. Anyway, Sam has actually been in charge of the excavation of the materials from Duffy's cut, the actual skeletal materials. But indeed, I'm just going to really kind of give you a teaser about this new site, this new excavation, and also make mention of the fact that my portion of it is very small, okay? It is a big project that has been going on for a number of years, and I can't claim any kind of responsibility for all of the wonderful work that's been done thus far, okay? My responsibility has been actually to look at the skeletal materials which have come from the site and attempt to give them some insights, okay, into the circumstances surrounding the death and the burial of what appears to be about 57 railway workers of Irish descent who were working on one of the mile markers in an area close by to Philadelphia in the town of Malvern, and attempt to kind of clarify some of the issues that were associated with the death of those individuals, okay? So I have to do a little bit of history, and I apologize. My history was probably the course that I got the lowest grade in when I was in college. And if anybody knows Pennsylvania history better, just pipe up and enlighten me. I'm happy to be enlightened on any point, actually, not just those, but on any point. Okay. The real team that's associated with Duffy's Cut actually runs primarily out of Immaculata University, which is a university which is right in the near environs of Philadelphia. And the team, composed of many members, not just these four, have been involved in actually trying to figure out the location of a mass burial associated with immigrant Irish railway workers who were brought to this country specifically, okay, to work on an early industrial revolution construction of a railway line, okay. In a matter of just a few months, okay, all of those construction workers actually died, and the lore in the region, and historically, okay, coming from the railroad, is that they died in a cholera epidemic, okay. So as I kind of unfold this, I have to tell you at the onset, I have no idea what happened to the dead men of Duffy's Cut, okay? I have some ideas, and I've talked a lot with other people about them. Thus far, we have 2 of the skeletons here at the museum. They tell me that 2 more have been unearthed, okay? I haven't had a chance to look at those 2. Sam has given me some great insights into the kind of contextual materials associated with them. And I'm really here just to kind of concentrate, look at those bones, and see what information I can give them to kind of illuminate all of these issues which are associated with this kind of tragedy associated with the building of this small spur of a large canal railway system that spanned the whole of Pennsylvania. Okay. Anyway, you have to bear with me on a lot of this. I'm kind of having a thought exercise as I put it together, more than a sort of a final sort of talk. Okay? The mass grave area is actually marked by one of these historic road markers, and if you travel up to the town of Malvern and you're on Route 30, you'll come upon it. Sorry, I didn't realize we had such a large kind of group of people in the room, so the text might be a little bit small. But the marker actually says, somewhere in this area, okay, is a mass grave of 57 Irish immigrant workers who died in August 1832 of cholera. The issue is, did they die of cholera? Okay, and it seems actually quite unlikely to me as a skeletal person that they did, and there is epidemiological reasons why I think that, and then there is reasons that actually derive from the analysis of the bones too. So follow my thoughts and definitely question me if I kind of go off track and I don't see or I don't think about certain ramifications of some of the issues that I will present. Okay. For those of you who know nothing about it, as I really kind of knew nothing about it, Pennsylvania in the early part of the 19th century became involved in the construction of basically a Pennsylvania equivalent of what was the Erie Canal in New York. Okay? In order for people to move from Philadelphia to Pittsburgh over a 395-mile trek in a Conestoga wagon would take the better course of about 23 days. Okay? And part of it is over, obviously relatively easy and flat terrain, but a good measure of it is over the Allegheny sequence of mountains, okay, that are sort of the central western part of the state. So this particular construction, as is true in the Erie Canal, okay, was part railway bedding, it was part the use of canals, it was the use of steam engines that would haul these really these almost cargo ships, okay, up the course of the main course of the Allegheny Mountains and then drop back down by a canal system into Pittsburgh. In any event, the use of the canal would take approximately 4.5 days to transverse, okay? So it was a real time-saving and labor-saving device for those people who were transmitting people as well as goods, okay, back and forward across the state. The area that is our concentration is actually this small portion here, the Philadelphia-Columbia Railway. And that railway segment, okay, was built, okay, by, a series of people in kind of outline little plots, okay, over the course of several years. The entire railway and canal system actually took 6 years to construct. And one of the tunnels actually through the Allegheny, I'll show you the sealed up tunnel as it exists today, took 4 years to actually construct by many dozens of Irish and Welsh immigrant workers who chiseled into the mountains in little 6-inch segments, okay, and then would seep dynamite, okay, blowing up small sections, okay, of that of the bedrock essentially of the Alleghenies, with one group coming from the east, one group coming from the west, and hopefully meeting pretty close in the middle. And I think that they did. The railway line that is listed here as the Columbia-Philadelphia Railway line is still in use today. Okay? So if you go to this area, and you've heard about the Sugartown Curve, for example, and it's running Amtrak trains, SEPTA trains, probably freight trains too, you probably have actually looked into this valley, okay, in which these Irish immigrants were given the task of actually constructing, to me this blows my mind, and I'll show you the best I can with a Google map when we get there, a mountain, okay, that actually would span a narrow but very deep ravine. So the railway tracks could transverse, okay, the peaks of the hills, okay, that actually were on both sides of the ravine. A task I can't even imagine the immensity of, okay. I'll show you their bodies, and indeed, okay, no matter what, okay, we're looking at super powerful people, okay, based on the musculature of their skeleton that lived a life of really kind of dramatic activity associated with physicality, okay. So that, at least I can give you a glimpse on in terms of what life was like in actually this kind of construction. So I'll pace on, okay. And these particular rail lines actually were used with, obviously, rail cars, but they were hauled, at least on the Philadelphia-Columbia part to it, by horses, okay. The part that went over the Allegheny was through steam engines, okay. Part of it on the canal, of course, was through steamboats, okay. But this part was sort of the very mechanics, okay, associated with movement along rail lines, okay. The rail line today, by the way, is slightly higher, okay, than it was when it was originally constructed, but remnants of the original bed actually exist, and the Watsons and the other people involved at Immaculata have actually produced some of the rail segments as well as some of the ties that are associated with the original rail line. Okay, so it's a little bit higher. They actually, smoothed out one of the real sharp bends at the Sugartown Curve, but it basically is there. Okay, really engineering feat, okay, that allow that connection between this segment of Philadelphia and lines further west. So it's something that we need to always make sure that we take account of, the hard work that went into, and sometimes the suffering that went into the construction of some of these commuting systems that are part of the United States. what kind of freaked me out, and I got this off of the Pennsylvania State Archives website, is how they actually put a boat on a train, which is what they did, okay? And they constructed, again, with an interesting feat of engineering, okay, boats that they could divide and then seal together in several segments, okay? So they were hauled as individual boat segments along the line. When they actually got to the Juniata River, for example, they reassembled the boats, and these were quite massive because they're using them for cargo, they're transporting people with their possessions, all these sorts of things. Then they would seal, okay, the segments of the boat to each other, then use it as a boat, okay, on the canals, and then deassemble it on the other side as they rose up over the Allegheny Mountains. Unbelievable story. This is the Staple Bend Tunnel as it exists today. Obviously, it's no longer in use. I've been told that the reason why it's no longer in use is because the diameter of it is too narrow to really handle any kind of modern train, freight train, passenger train. So of course they've had to build alternative tunneling systems, okay, through the mountainside when you get to that part of Pennsylvania, and they transport, of course, trains and, you know, street traffic off the turnpike and other kinds of things. So the tunnel is no longer in use, but you can actually see the remnants of it on both sides, okay? The story also needs to have a bit of a background on cholera. And the lore is that all of these immigrants did indeed die of cholera. And soon as I heard the story, and I actually looked at that street marker, a little flag in my head went up, and the little flag said, "Cholera is not 100% fatal." Okay, there you go. Something's wrong with this story. And, okay, cholera is, and unfortunately I'll show you some more graphic parts of this, cholera is bacterial and it's oral fecal transmission, okay? So it occurs basically usually through contaminated water sources, okay? Which generally speaking are in cities, okay? If you're gonna look at big epidemics associated with cholera, they're gonna be where you have a very dense concentration of people. Okay, so when cholera broke out in Philadelphia, people went to Malvern. You know what I mean? Like, so now we're looking at Malvern as like a concentrated area, okay, really a hotbed of cholera. That doesn't epidemiologically make a lot of sense. I mean, of course, there could be lots of confounding factors in that, but that, along with the 100% fatality associated with cholera, does send up a little flag in my head, okay, as it probably would to most people who know a little bit about endemic and pandemic diseases, okay. There is sort of much kind of, information out there about cholera and cholera epidemics as they existed in the early to middle part of the 19th century. Of course, it was thought to have come essentially from India, so it's called India or Eastern cholera. The routes of transport, okay, into places very distant, okay, have been sort of tracked through. There's many historic maps as well as many publications, okay, that document not only sort of the story of cholera, but also two ways of minimizing the effects of cholera on humans, okay, including probably one of my favorite, the homeopathic treatment of cholera, as well as, I think hopefully the next slide, no it isn't, so I'm gonna pace through, okay. The next slide, okay, on advice, what to do if you think you might actually be coming down with cholera, okay? It's always a good idea to avoid bathing or drinking water when you're sick, you know, so of course it worked really well. I go back, okay. Anyway, okay, cholera, sorry about that. Cholera, I just took this off of Wikipedia, okay, is a disease which has been with humans for a very long time. And I actually put my own World Health Organization pamphlet as a slide in the slide set, because every time I travel, you know, basically outside the United States and various places, especially in Africa, you're asked to get, and you're required actually to get, a vaccination against cholera, okay? So it's still a major, okay, source of disease globally. It's very easy to minimize your exposure to cholera, and it is, I mean, it's one of those simple things that they tell you and you think this can't possibly be correct. Wash your hands, okay? So washing your hands is going to really be very effective. Okay. It, of course, is a diarrheal-based disease. Okay. And the shock of it is the death can come so rapidly, okay, after exposure, okay? And certainly with no ability to artificially hydrate, which is probably going to be the cause of death, or primarily the cause of death, people are indeed going to die like flies if a water source does become infected and people are constantly taking it in as part of their drinking water. Okay? So cholera is around today. It is a killer today. It's not obviously in the United States today or most of the developed world, but in many countries around the world, it still is something which is a source of major public health problems. Okay? As a diarrheal disease, it's in the category of the single leading cause of killers worldwide. Okay? So when they sort of pace through the various diseases which are responsible for death globally, okay, the two diseases that run hand in hand are diarrhea and respiratory infections. Okay? So it is probably one of the components, okay, of those diseases that produce diarrheal effects. So key one out there. This is an outhouse. And the reason why I show it is to kind of remind us all about, essentially sanitation, especially sort of before the sort of modern views of sanitation, but also to remind me to mention, okay, that at that time, although we're not looking about, kind of a very strong emphasis on public health, there was a realization, essentially, of how diseases were transmitted, okay? Not in the sense that they understood germs or these kinds of concepts. Certainly that wasn't in place. But the issues that were in place at that time were issues having to do with hygiene, okay, filth, okay, and all of these associated with disease, as well as the 18th century, okay, group of observations that allowed them to understand exposure, okay, and the first vaccinations which were produced in actually the middle part of the 18th century through smallpox. Okay? So it wasn't as if, okay, this was a total mystery, okay, that you could have contamination, okay. The fact of the matter is that you have to have a broad contamination, you have to have many people exposed to it, and then a certain percentage of them will succumb to it, okay. This is New York City, and it's one aspect of its vital statistics as we go from 1800 to 1970, okay, and you can see, okay, the spikes, okay, which are associated with cholera deaths, okay, and of course you can see overall, okay, the reduction, okay, in the number of deaths per thousand as we pace, okay, into the early part of the 20th century, okay. But you can see that a lot of the history of the world, okay, has really been sealed or has marched around, okay, essentially a whole series of epidemics, okay. And Philadelphia, although not recognized probably for having one of the more serious versions of a cholera epidemic, probably having to do with various parts of the sewage and sanitation systems in the city, we were very well known for its yellow fever epidemic in about the same time frame. So that's our sort of claim to fame. New York, okay, on the other hand, okay, really produced some of the probably the most serious cholera epidemics throughout the whole, really, of the 19th century. I also, too, recognize and try to kind of grapple in my own mind, okay, with what the difference is between an epidemic and a pandemic. I know it's a little small at the bottom, but pandemics are epidemics which have a global perspective to them. And this is actually showing you a listing, okay, of the pandemics which are associated with cholera. And you can see that they go up right to modern times, okay, that's likely to emerge in another setting, at some point in time. Diseases don't really go away. They just kind of change and their target population somewhat alter. And of course, we always have to recognize that it's going to be very difficult to fully control any of these kinds of diseases, okay. In New York City, okay, the plot of the city actually they were actually able to precisely pinpoint via the axe, okay, the place of the contaminated water pump that created, okay, one of these pandemics, okay. And always, okay, they concentrate, essentially in very particular areas. That's why, again, I'm a little leery about this having to do with these Irish immigrants. In London, apparently, there is one station and one water pump which is now a shrine, essentially, to the cholera victims, okay, that had died at the time of one of their really massive pandemics, okay, spread all over Europe, but really hit the city of London very hard. Okay, once it's contaminated, kind of moves on. This is actually an early couple of woodcuts. Okay. This one having to do with the idea of, getting rid of the bad air, basically sanitation. And this one of the early efforts associated with vaccination. And this is of a young girl being exposed to pus, okay, from a cow, because of course the recognition early on was that milkmaids, okay, rarely, if ever, got smallpox. So the recognition was that they were somehow exposed to a pox-like group of symptoms that would erupt in their herds. And so, of course, by taking the pus, it's the same, almost the same philosophy that governs vaccination today, and giving a little bit of exposure that person, okay, would be able to tolerate, okay, greater exposure to the disease pathogen at some later date. Okay, so it's not like a world that is completely without understanding the structure of disease. And here's my World Health Card. I love this. And I always put it up because people think these things are gone. So there's cholera, okay? And the fact of the matter is I traveled a whole lot and nobody ever gave me a cholera vaccination. And then this person writes in an illegible handwriting over here, okay? And you're like, and actually she did it purposefully. And she did it purposefully because, okay, she said that she wasn't going to give me a cholera vaccine, but to carry the card you had to have it sort of noted on there. So it made it look like it actually was a cholera vaccine. It actually says not indicated. I love that. Okay. But typhoid's still with us. Obviously some of them, you're more likely to actually to get hepatitis A in the United States than anywhere else in the world. Okay. Hepatitis B is blood-borne, but also polio, for example, gamma globulin was usually the hepatitis. Anyway, the first one is bacterial meningitis. So, the most of the world still suffers from epidemics, okay? It's just, for us, the idea of epidemic is scary, thus the rhetoric associated with the H1N1 virus. This is just a quick one I'll pass over, having to do with early vaccinations. So, cholera. 2, okay? Immigrant workers were detested, okay, by local people, okay? And this plays out in every country around the world, as far as I can see. It has played out for essentially centuries, okay? So this idea, okay, that immigrants are bringing in disease, that they're dirty, that they're taking away jobs, okay, is probably as old as humans. I would say, if I, was really more of a kind of a biology person, I would say it's in our genes to hate everybody else. Okay? I really shouldn't laugh about that, but it is, something that has a kind of a real sort of universal kind of a flow to it. Okay? And certainly that was the case with the Irish and Welsh immigrants who were coming in doing a lot of the labor in the United States, along, of course, with enslaved peoples coming from Africa, supposedly in this part of the world, freed slaves, okay, whatever that meant, okay, freed slaves. So it's not uncommon to actually historically see riots breaking out, and of course the wholesale murder in a lot of cases of some of these immigrant populations. So this one, it's the only one I could actually find pictorial version of, comes from 1844. But these outbreaks had been occurring for a very long time, okay? And certainly were known to have occurred with the Irish immigrants that were brought in to build the Philadelphia-Columbia Railway. Anyway, this is the railroad today, okay? I tried to give a sense of the sort of the feeling of the topography, okay, of this part of the world, but Google Maps wasn't letting me do it too well. As much as I kind of got on Google Maps and looked at my own house and the Eiffel Tower and stuff like this, it kind of failed me a little bit on this. Okay. Here's the rail system as it is today, okay, right along in here, okay. And this is more of a close-up, okay. And actually, in fact, the ravine over these two little kind of hillocks, okay, is right running centrally in here, okay. This is a culvert, okay. There's a housing project around it. It's on privately owned land, okay. And the massive earth that was moved to build up that little part of the railway, okay, is right in this area here, okay. It's actually rail marker 59, okay, so it's the 59th mile, okay, of this railway system. And you can see the tracks running on top of it, okay, and of course, you know, as I said before, it's in use today, okay. So it looks kind of lovely coming from the air. It's a nice summer day, okay, but as Sam can tell you, okay, the area is quite overgrown. It's difficult to get to. You certainly can pull up onto the street, and apparently one of the neighbors lets you drive down their driveway. You go down their driveway, get onto some little dirt kind of beaten tracks, and then walk to this area. It was known that these railway workers were buried somewhere in this vicinity, okay, and probably in moved earth, which was associated with the filth that they were producing, okay. So the Watsons, as well as their whole team at Immaculata, for years have been searching in this area for a place that would be a likely candidate to hold this mass burial. And I became associated with the project, gosh, I guess 2 years ago, when in the first slide, if you saw the name of Tim Bechtel, who's here in the Department of Environmental Studies, asked me to look at a packet of bones, okay, that they had found as a kind of a surface find, okay, in this area, in the hopes that they had finally located the place of the bodies of the Duffy cut workers, okay. And of course, you know, I take them up to my office and kind of hanging out there looking at it, wow, like a lot of nice cow bones, you know. So they found a lot of nice cow bones. That's 2 years ago. So when Tim called me in March of 2009 and said, I know we found it, we have it, you know, this is the real thing. And I thought to myself, oh my God, now I'm going to look at pig bones, because at least they're about the right size, you know what I mean? So he comes over and I'm like, oh, I don't want to really look at it, you know what I mean? I'm thinking I'm going to put this off for a couple of days. But indeed, it was human bone, okay? And indeed, okay, when Sam actually arrived and, you know, got them to grid the area and take the rest of the bones out, it was arranged in a body position, okay? And there's some issues with that I need to kind of get into more detail too. So it's in kind of a body position. So indeed, they have come down upon that area, okay, in the vicinity, maybe they're all there, whatever, okay? Tim, as a geologist, was able to use some ground sensing radar to be able to map at likely areas where they could see hollows, essentially, in the earth where they thought it was likely that the graves would be located, okay? So what can we do with the bones? This is what you came for. I finally got here. What will we do with the bones? And I'm actually trying not to talk about the bones, because even though I've like put the slides together over the last week, I'm like, I don't know what to say about these bones. I mean, like, and you know, the thing is, there's something very teasing and tempting about it, so I'll kind of go a little bit out on a limb. And you know, of course, I'm always ready to be reined back, and I'm always ready to say, when we look at the other 50, if they do come out 54 or so when they come out, we'll be able to make some probably more grounded, okay, conclusions, okay? Anyway, what can we do with the bones? Well, burial position is a big issue when it comes to what we can contribute to these kinds of studies. Okay? Are the bodies thrown in place, or are they arranged as if they are in a burial? Okay? And the answer is not easy on this one. In other words, like, this thing is driving me a little bit wacky, because like it doesn't conform to the pattern. You know, I want it to be the pattern, you know, and then it's not going to do it. Okay? Animal activity, if they're thrown in there, I mean, basically, how deep are they buried? Are they being dug up? Are there animal marks on them? Those kinds of things. What can we see on those body parts which have actually been removed? Okay, and then for us, okay, is there any evidence of any kind of violence associated with these people? Because, okay, and this is unfortunate, skeletons don't give us very good indications of any kind of very short-term infectious disease, okay? So there can be no evidence or a skeletal indicator of cholera, okay? But we can get evidence of other things on the skeleton, I'll show you some other things too, as well as any evidence of violence on the skeleton. I also put this in as a word cue for myself, just so you know. We've looked high and low and tried everything that we could possibly do, because you know how you kind of mentally need a little bit of guidance. Okay? There are no comparable sites to Duffy's cut, okay? None out there in the United States. Okay? Maybe there are somewhere globally. And by that I mean, okay, that there is no graveyard or grave place, okay, that we know represents laborers, okay, of some sort, okay? And we know something about, you know, those individuals. We do have graves, okay, that come from that time period. So, you know, basically we do know, okay, that, you know, we can do comparisons to, you know, a sample of some living population now in its dead form from some church graveyard, something like that. But there's nothing, okay, that's comparable to this sort of, you know, a very narrow focus kind of a place. It's a mass grave, okay, and it comes from this time frame of the early Industrial Revolution. So there's not a lot of hints, okay. It's, you know, there's not a lot of people kind of work through this as kind of a mindset, okay. So in a sense, okay, me and the people working on the bones, like Sam, are actually kind of constructing a way to study something like this. You know what I mean, Sam? I mean, it's like really tough. I mean, it's like you sit there and you look at it and you go like, it could be this, it could be that, and you're balancing lots of different factors, okay, when it comes to it. One of the Duffy cut people that's out so far is a burial, okay? And we know that based on Sam's good excavation, but also too based on the fact that they were able to retrieve, okay, God, it must have been 60, 70, okay, unmachined nails, okay, coffin nails is what they are, okay? So initially, looking at that many nails, we're going like, were they nailing? I mean, were they nailing people to the ground or something? No, okay. If you look at all the corners on a coffin, basically, it's going to amount to quite a few nails, okay? This is a flex burial. It's an extended burial, and it's in a coffin, okay? Which will come up in a minute because the person that's in the coffin has something wrong with them, okay? I don't know what it is. It's not a bone scatter, you know what I mean? It's not like bones thrown in the ground and they decompose and they kind of all get mixed up, okay? So it doesn't conform to any of the sort of normal scenarios that are associated with a burial place. It just doesn't do it. I mean, it's not this and it's not that. It's like something in between. The second body is willy-nilly and it's underneath the first, okay? You know what I mean? So there you go. You've got this kind of, okay, this is maybe a dump body. The next one, right on top of it, is a coffin person. I mean, like, you know, come on. What's going on with this, okay? There are no animal marks on them at all. And Pennsylvania would have had puma. You know what I mean? Like, and I'm sure they lived out there in the woods. Puma didn't go extinct in this part of Pennsylvania until probably about 1840, 1850, something like that, okay? And so there were wild cougars kind of hanging out there, okay, that I'm sure would have liked to gone on and chomped onto some Irish railway worker, okay, if given the opportunity. Or any railway worker, or anybody at all, actually. In the western part of Pennsylvania today, the cougars that are coming back are actually taking out bicyclists. That's what they're aiming for right now. Isn't that kind of interesting? Anything that moves apparently becomes dinner. Okay. Sam did take on, and I don't know how she manages to balance all of this with all of her schoolwork, but she did take on the task of actually working with the Duffy Cut team, who are not archaeologists, and attempting to really kind of give them the skills to allow them to get out there and to actually, in a reasonable scientific way, actually extract the bodies. And she's been on site when the bodies have come out and has done some great photography, and hopefully one day, Loa, you can invite her to talk about the excavations at Duffy's Cut. Okay. And so her efforts contextualize the bodies for us in ways that the historians really weren't able to do without her help. Okay. There is also a contracted archaeologist who's working with them that comes from the University of Maryland. So the bones are in bad shape. Okay. Pennsylvania stinks for bone preservation. I mean, I should have been born in the Southwest. Okay? I mean, when a body comes out, you know what it is. You have no problem. You know, it has all the stuff on it. Okay? No, we have Pennsylvania bodies. Okay? So this is one of the bodies from Duffy's cut. Okay? And then it's spread out. This we actually did for a film shoot coming from an Irish film crew. Okay? And bones as they sit here, okay, are very informative to me because, okay, this kind of sort of mess of bones like this, okay, you see in virtually all of the sites that I've been associated with in Pennsylvania. And one, we're very lucky here at the Penn Museum, we actually have the skeletons that come from a Quaker burial ground. And they are virtually identical in terms of the kind of breakage and all. And you guys who did all of this stuff in the human skeleton class, you too, Loa, probably did identifications of a lot of these bodies like in this kind of state. Okay, they're great. Okay, in terms of learning osteology, it's a real challenge. Okay, but they're nice, not nice whole bodies. You know, so there's not a lot we can do. Okay, or there are certain things we would like to do but are not able to do. Okay, so here is Sam holding the second individual as it came out of the ground. Unfortunately, one of the seemingly rich bone areas is directly under the very dense and elaborate rooting system of a tree. I forget the kind of tree that it is. Okay, a tree. Okay, so they've had to kind of shift focus and where the excavations are actually being placed. Okay, they're attempting to get permission actually to take out that tree so they'll be able to do more excavation. Okay, and you can see that they come out, you know, and essentially in not really the best of shape. Okay, initially what we were able to do, and this was really key, okay, is tell them that indeed they're men. Okay, good. Okay, so we didn't have any, I don't know, railway workers in drag or something like that. They were indeed men, okay? And we were able to easily do that, okay, based on the structure of the pelvis. So this is actually just one of our teaching pelvis here in the museum. This is the first Duffy cut infant individual. And we base it on basically two characteristics. It's a broken piece, so it's not the perfect one to do sexing on. But both of the areas of morphology which are necessary for sexing are here. That is the narrow sciatic notch, okay, and the lack of a little ridge, okay, that occurs right underneath this attachment area for the sacrum at the back of the pelvis. Is called the preauricular sulcus, okay. And women have a very extensive version of this little crease, okay, because the uteral artery actually runs right up beside the bone, okay, right in that place, okay. So of course it excavates a little trough, okay? And so when you don't have a trough, okay, basically then you are in all likelihood looking at a male. We were able to give their age at death. Actually, I don't have a dentition slide in here, but we know that they're in their early 20s, okay? So there you go, okay, perfect age for immigrant workers. The next group of slides, however, is about their muscularity, okay? They are buff people, okay, you know what I mean? I don't know how else to put it. They're power people, okay? And one of the areas that I'm showing, this is actually one of the Quaker bones, okay? Can you see the kind of way that it's sort of preserved? Okay? And this is one of the Duffy cut people. And I picked the biggest Quaker person, okay? So what I came to realize is Quakers are wimps, okay? Immigrant railway workers are buff people, okay? Anyway, okay, do you see this little crease over here on the bone? Okay, that part of the bone of a femur is under an incredible amount, actually, of compression strength, okay, compression force, okay. Body weight is actually tipped right onto the top of the femur, okay. The top and the outside edge of the femur in this area is under tension, like a bowing or bending kind of a tension. This is under extreme compression, okay. And the bone is actually buttressed and flattened, okay, in that area, indicating that there is some major physical activity going on with that person, okay. This is like, we actually see it a lot in Neanderthals, okay, who are supposed to be pretty buff people, and probably, if we could just boil them down, Arnold Schwarzenegger, okay? But he won't stand still. On the upper limb, okay, this is one of the scapula from the collection. This is a Duffy cut person. Do you see this big wide area in here? here, okay, that is the attachment area of one of the major groupings of fibers associated with the muscle called triceps, okay. So it's the big muscle, like if somebody's going like this, you can see the muscle on the back of the arm, okay. It's an extensor of the elbow, it's also an extensor of the shoulder. It's a muscle which is frequently used to brace the shoulder under heavy weight, okay? So it's not like it's being used to carry things, obviously, okay? But it's bracing the shoulder in position on the rib cage, okay, so that something heavy can be carried, okay? So it's massive, and again, and I work on a lot of kind of bone stuff. This is like a Neanderthal person, okay? In terms of the buttressing of the bone. On the pelvis, again, we're looking on the back surface. Okay, this is a super well muscled bone in our collection. You see these little ridges? Okay, I wasn't great with my lighting on this, but these ridges, these are the pelvic balancing muscles called the gluteal muscles. Okay, this guy not only has huge ridges associated with the balancing muscles, there's actually a whole dimple on the pelvis associated with it. Okay. Probably also having to do with heavy lifting, okay, and also things associated with balance movement, maybe, and it's hard to imagine exactly what particular task would be associated with this, but this is a super well-muscled individual. Back to Sam, okay, there she is, and the heads, okay, and then it's combined with the following thing, okay, all kinds of indications of poor health. Okay? And it's not cholera, it's just long-term poor health, okay? Yeah, freak you out. So these are people who are working with that intensity while basically being subclinically ill, okay? So it's like, it would be like on your very worst day with a cold, somebody tells you, oh, okay, go out and make a mountain. You know what I mean? And you're like, I think I want to go back to bed, right? Okay. And why do I say that? Okay. Well, every part of the bone that we can image shows this clearly to be the case. Okay. These are big, huge, open, they're called mastoid air cells. Okay. And these cells, when they become so large and they actually form a confluence, okay, is a record of, okay, what must have been lifelong ear infections, okay? And we do know, okay, that ear infections was a cause of death in the past. Okay, this individual obviously lived to adulthood with them, but would have suffered probably from a lot of consequences of that. I can't imagine what that would have been like. Earaches, all of the time, okay? Essentially roots of infection, colds, that kind of stuff, okay? And again, I didn't take the greatest shot on this. Usually I'm a better photographer, but I was stinky at it the last 2 days. In the top of the eye orbit, so here's the eye orbit right here. This is the top of it. It's a fragment of bone. This is actually, by the way, for those of you who have a cold, the frontal sinuses. They're the ones that give you those nice headaches. Okay. This is full of this pitted or pockmarked bone, okay, that's part of a whole kind of a health stress syndrome that people talk about in skeletal biology all of the time. It's called cribra orbitalia, and you might have read about it in maybe some other skeletal context or whatever. This person has active cribra orbitalia, okay, which in a lot of places in the world has been associated with, okay, anemias, okay, especially associated with genetic-based anemias, and certainly that's not going to be Ireland, okay. So, there's something else going on, kind of disease-based, okay, which is associated with this very active formation of cribra orbitalia, okay. So, massively muscled and sick at the same time, okay, and kind of an odd thing, okay. The skulls, okay, here you go, okay. And this is what I don't know what to do with, and again, I've talked with Sam and other people too, and none of us really know what to do with. They're young people, okay, and because they're young people, the suture divisions between the individual bones, okay, is quite open, what we would call patent, okay. And in fact, this suture, which is the squamosal suture, is sprung. So what it means is when you bury something in the ground and there's weight on it, this suture is not an interdigitating suture, it's a flat-like suture. It springs, oftentimes under the weight of earth or something like that. And it happens in young people. It's sprung, okay? And in fact, all of the breaks on this skull and on the first skull too are all along suture lines, okay? Because of course that's going to be the place, okay, that is going to fail first under any kind of pressure, right? So there you go. It makes total sense. The second individual, okay, which I'll pace through, is all in single whole bone fragments, all of them broken along suture lines, right? Okay. So, okay, you have to ask yourself the question, if pressure on a skull, when it's in the ground or whatever, springs or breaks open sutures in young people, what the hell is this? And it's not a fresh break. I first blamed Sam for hitting it with a shovel, okay? But it's as dirty, okay, on the edges of the bone as it is anywhere else on the bone. So it's been around for as long as the bone's been in the ground, okay? And, okay, it does something else funky bad, okay? And that is, okay, that it presents these what are called radiating fractures, okay? And radiating fractures are at the point, okay, when a bone is stressed, okay, in a living person, when a bone is stressed, okay, it will actually bend a certain amount, okay, and then it will fail, okay? So it's a fail fracture, okay? I know, okay? So this made all of us, basically say, okay, this guy might have had cholera, but somebody hit him on the head. Probably killed him. That's a really serious fracture, okay? It could even be a bullet, okay, actually, to be honest, okay, because bullet holes are very difficult to recognize in fragmentary bones, okay? So it could be something that shattered out, part of the skull. Why I'm talking too long, okay? I'm almost at the end, actually. I'm sorry about this, okay? And then, okay, the thing is there is no evidence of any kind of healing on these bones, okay? So here, radiating fractures coming out of one of the skulls from our skeletal collection from Hassanlu, okay? You see them? These are failed fractures. That's a mace wound directly on the top of the head, okay? You can tell healing on bone really easily. This is a person who has a huge wound, okay, right in the area above the eye orbits and on the nose. And you can see that the bone is now mottled, okay, basically forming bridges over the original fractures. It's not healed, what we see on Duffy's cut. So in forensics, we would actually say that these are post-mortem fractures, okay? Ones that are occurring in around the time of death, okay? Now, they may have happened when they were in the ground. Somebody went over and smashed them on the head. I mean, I guess that's possible, but it doesn't seem like a reasonable kind of conclusion to come to. Sam was able to put together a series of CT scans for me just so we could look at what is on all of these specimens. Little dits, okay, and little dings, okay. And so we've come to the conclusion that probably, given the fact that they're construction workers of sorts, okay, that these are the sort of normal kind of hits that you would get on your head. Some of them seem more significant than other ones, okay. On the first individual, okay, there is one of these little dings, okay, but there's a second one that is a real hollow, okay, and is also suspicious, okay. And this is a CT scan, actually, in a sort of a weird dimension on this one. I guess it's kind of looking through, okay, because this is usually on the left and it's on the right-hand side here, okay, of that hole, okay. And you can see that every other break is a disjoint, okay, on a suture line. It's the only thing that's not on a suture line, which did kind of bring us to the conclusion, okay, that it is probably a blunt force trauma, okay. Again, right on the suture lines, okay, that's where it's all breaking. The other half of the skull is totally intact. Whatever was breaking it on this side, it wasn't affecting the other side in the same way, okay. And then this weird little kind of triangular divot, okay, out of it, okay, and a lot of different views on it here, okay. And yeah, they're radiating fractures on fresh bone, okay? So, okay, conclusions. It doesn't seem plausible, really, in any scenario to think that all 57 men died simultaneously of cholera, okay? It doesn't make sense, okay? And they could have been sick with cholera, okay? But they certainly didn't die of cholera at the same time. It's not 100% fatal, and to have it happen simultaneously makes no sense. To have it happen in a suburban area of Philadelphia also doesn't make sense that's well watered, okay? Meaning that they would have had access to fresh streams and all kinds of stuff, okay? And, you know, again, you really do need to have that confining space of humanness to really bring on a cholera epidemic. The position of the body in graves is haphazard, okay? But there is at least one individual in a coffin, okay? So it could make sense in terms of the scenario constructed by the historians that, okay, the first 3 bodies were ceremoniously buried, okay, by the blacksmith who was working on the railroad. And then the rest, okay, were just dumped, okay? It could be that. It's certainly possible, okay? The suspicious breaks must be confirmed with the analysis of all of the recovered individuals. It's going to be interesting to see what happens with bodies 3 and 4 and then subsequent ones that come out, okay? And the last sort of fact, okay, that makes me kind of move into this direction of, you know, something else going on at Duffy's cut, okay, is, okay, that the records were held, okay, at the division of the Columbia-Philadelphia rail line in secret, passed on to the group that purchased the railroad, which was the Pennsylvania Railroad, okay, where they were also kept in secret until Bill Watson's grandfather took the records, okay, from the bankrupt Pennsylvania Railroad in the 1970s. So why would you withhold, okay, records, okay, of immigrant workers working on a railroad if indeed they all just died of cholera, okay? It doesn't make a lot of sense, okay? I mean, and to keep them that secret, okay, for essentially what is a decade and a half, okay, makes me move towards, okay, thinking it a more suspicious to like forensically interesting terms with it, okay? So anyway, I will shut up. So you can see we're kind of just in the beginning of our work, okay?